Yeah, I've got mine too. No, it is.
You chose the place. That's the way I'm trying to keep my mind. I was out. I'm not complaining. Get paid to be there. It's 2 hours. They don't hide their most of we don't have the money to give you everything you want. It's the same all the time.
Yeah, because I need, we don't know. It's not just doing finding art. I have to fill out like forms.
It's your guys'
And then I
bureaucracy.
have to get that signature that I have to get. That signature that I have to get. Summer's not so bad because it's slower.
Yeah.
Loads of snacks over here. Please help yourselves. Donuts and snacks over there. Crushed fruit.
Right.
Please help yourselves. Donuts, there's fresh fruit, cookies.
But of course, you can't miss you. Which one?
I mean, you can't have one. You can't have one.
Nice. I live in Spring Hill.
I on the road this morning. We started Unfortunately, I thought about that because I started particularly kind of heavy builders to me. And I was there. My daughter's I think I left early. But it's a nice drive coming in from north. Probably the other way around. Terrible area down town.
My husband works in, well, he works right on the Metro, so on the Metro. My thing, his building is on the Metro, so it's DOT. And he has to leave, he's like, it's like every morning, right in a certain spot, it's like a dead spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually end up working on 2 sets. You just get used to it.
Yeah, you do. I worked in Harbor
Car
Island.
wrecks around.
From Spring Hill.
No.
Good morning, everybody. You guys ready to get going? It's 9:30.
Well, I'm surviving. Surviving is
Sure. Like our own. Only
we're stretching into different, aspects and different areas over the type.
you have. Good morning, everybody. Before we get going with the substance, I want to make a couple of quick announcements. Most of you probably know, but if you don't, this is Pam Nadolski. She's a paralegal at the college. She's going to take over for Mickey Fay in doing the minutes. She's been in the Leadership Institute for the
Yeah,
Fire
President's
meeting.
Institute.
President's Institute, so that's why she hasn't been present here, but she doesn't necessarily know. I don't know if you know everybody.
I don't.
Can you guys just run down and introduce yourself so she can write it down for the minutes?
Sure.
Oh, sure. Eric Spaziani,
Okay,
professor of biological sciences at West Campus.
okay,
I'm Gary Ash. I teach psychology in East Kansas.
okay,
Lauren Byers, Southern Organizing Specialist, United Faculty of Florida.
okay,
Graham Vogelsheimer, Chief Negotiator for the union.
all right.
And Julie Hendrickson, Biological Sciences Associate Professor, and I'm doing.
We've also got two other members on our team who aren't here yet. One is Caitlin Downing in English and Fred Prescott in mathematics. Okay, so she won't be here today, but she's part of the team.
Okay,
And I think Fred, is en route.
Yeah, I think your side has been pretty stable with the same group, so probably look at the prior minutes. Secondarily, you probably noticed Dr. Jeanette's not present with us today. He wanted to be, but he wanted to let you guys know. The reason he's not here is that he's a commissioner with the Workforce and Economic Development Commission of the American Association of Community Colleges, and they have a meeting today in Orlando that he can't miss. So that's unfortunate, but that's the reason he's not here. The other thing I'd say is it's also come to our attention that the union has been contacting the Board of Trustees. And while I know you have a legal right to do that, that's something that I thought in the first meeting we agreed not to do. I think it makes it more difficult for us. The Board of Trustees is aware of the basic status of what's going on, but from our perspective, there's a statutory process where the president, his team, which is this group here, is the chief negotiator. To the extent the union tries to bring in the trustees individually during negotiations, I think that's just going to complicate our efforts to try and reach an agreement. Of course, they have a process as well. They'll have to either ratify an agreement or if there's an impasse, resolve it. So I wanted to raise that because it's something that we hope doesn't continue.
Well, to my knowledge, trustees have been invited to the bargaining sessions, which, they're members of the public that can attend or not attend. But I'm not aware, certainly haven't authorized any sort of attempts to bargain or advocate for bargaining issues to trustees. So I'm not sure to what extent you're hearing about that, but I can assure you that it's not being done under the blessing of the union if there's attempts to negotiate with Board of Trustee members. But I do know that some faculty have reached out and invited them to attend sessions.
I understand that, and just so it's clear from our perspective, I've asked them not to attend the sessions, although I've indicated to them, of course, it's their right to do so. It's a public meeting, anybody can come. But just to be clear, the reason why I've asked them not to attend is that my experience has been is it sidetracks the negotiations. So we end up lots of questions at the sessions being directed to the audience, things of that nature. And of course, the other part of it is legally, if there's an impasse, then they have to take off their hat as the employer at this point in time, become the impartial body that resolves any disputes, and don't want to do anything that would jeopardize their ability to do that. So now it's up to them whether they come or not, but to me, it doesn't. It just sets the process back. But in any event, let's talk about what here to talk about. I think maybe we did have one tentative agreement from last time. My recollection, I did print out the let's see what the article number was, the consultation with the president provision. If you want to start with that, we can initial off that. Where we accepted the last proposal of the union, it's Article 4.6, if I have my number correct. So Graham, I'll give this to you, and if it's agreeable, we can sign it, keep signing it. I'll sign two. And all right, where do you want to go next? Do you have a preference?
Well, I think we both had some things that we were going to bring. Why don't we start with our 3 and 4? These are the articles that we've kind of been working on and hopefully getting to some more conclusions on some things. So first of all, and this is entirely my fault, I was in a rush this morning and left without my binder with copies for everyone. We attempted to make some copies in the copier over here, but then it would not stop jamming. We managed to get one copy out of it. So I've got a copy for you, Brian. And as soon as we take a caucus, I'll send an electronic copy so you can run off more for your team to discuss. But minor inconvenience, but I apologize for that.
Would you like me to make copies? We can run out the bill pretty quickly.
Yeah, if you've got a machine that'll work, that might be helpful. Although I don't have a third page of this particular one to give you at the moment.
Why don't we do this? We've got a couple from Article 4 that we were going to do. Why don't we get Donna to make a copy when we can talk about our Article 4 proposals if you want.
Okay, yeah, that works for me.
And so we're not delaying anything.
How many copies would you like?
Let's do 20.
20?
Yeah, just keep the whole thing. I'll give you back to being a file.
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
It'll work for a minute. And that's fine. Yeah, so just to make it easy, you might want to collate them kind of by article. So 20 of this and then,
I'm doing these up, right?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I think that would be
All right.
all right. 4 different articles.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. We also have extra buttons if anyone likes our buttons. We've got a bunch here that you're welcome to have.
I'll take one. I don't know if I'm gonna wear it a lot, but I'll take it. Thank
So are these all extras then? Everyone's got one? Everyone's got 4. You got one?
So what I've handed out is employer's proposal on Articles 4.2 and 4.4. 4.2 is the union office. You can see our proposal here, pretty straightforward. We're agreeable to the union office, but subject to availability and location determined by the employer. Provided we have that availability and location, we're agreeable to provide the office under the terms as set forth there. Article 4.4, similar to prior proposals being passed back and forth, the access to faculty article. Try to get a little closer to what the union has proposed. We don't have any great heartburn with the union having access to the faculty. We heard what you discussed last time regarding the all college day or district-wide meetings are in subsection B. We just want to make it sure that it's clear that it's not something that is necessarily endorsed in the union. If you're going to discuss messages with the faculty, that it's the union's message. And we also have at the end there language that we've added to just make sure there's no conflict. And typically, in my experience, you don't see a lot of conflict, but occasionally you do in terms of we don't want, in other words, to have a meeting, be sending out a message on whatever the topic be, to have the union then meet immediately thereafter and sending out an inconsistent or the opposite message. I doubt that's going to happen, but nonetheless, that's the language we've added just to make sure that it does not. So these are our 2 articles that we're proposing. I think that we agreed to come back with that we've already been discussing. Happy to answer any questions if you have any on these.
We'll talk about it. I think 4.2 is pretty straightforward. I don't anticipate any big problem with that.
Right, and the reasoning for the availability and all that is that what I've been told by administration here is that space is limited, and obviously from the college's perspective, the first priority is students, classes, faculty having offices, that kind of thing. There's no doubt in my mind we can find space for a union office, but whether it's at a specific campus or whatnot at any given time, that's a different question. So I don't anticipate it being an issue.
Okay, yeah, we'll discuss. I think we can probably get you a response of some sort today.
The only other proposals we have are a couple on responses to your initial proposal from back in the first session or two, and some of the things that we've said we'd come back with. I can go ahead and start handing those out today if you want, since Donna's not back there. Let me circulate 9.3, which is standard core syllabus. 9.10, we have a proposal on substitute teaching in response to yours, and 9.11, business and professional expenses. right, so if you have Article 9.3, Standard Core Syllabus, in front of you, our proposal was to modify the union's proposal. And just to recount, the union's proposal was that the Standard Core Syllabus for each course would be finalized by the end of the term before, so the end of the fall term for spring and whatnot. And our counter proposal to that is to make it a little more generic, that we are agreeable. I think everybody's on the same page. We want to finalize these things as quick as we can, but we think it might be unworkable to commit to the last day of the term before, because, for example, at the end of the spring term, I'm told that things happen over the summer that might change the syllabus. So the intent is just to make sure we don't agree on a timeline that we can't meet. So we've suggested that we commit to finalizing the course syllabus within a reasonable period of time prior to the start of each term.
Who defines reasonable time?
Well, it really would be based on the circumstances of, each one. There are many, I'm assuming, that you could do by the end of the term before, but there are some that can't. So it's really
What
defined by the
stops the
circumstances.
administration from sending one the day before classes start?
Why would the administration want to do that?
That's what happened in the past.
So why does it happen? That's the question. In putting in a contract where we're just saying we'll do it 3 months earlier, does that aid the college mission? If there's, I don't know what happens on a day-to-day basis, but I doubt it's any nefarious reason that we're handing a syllabus the day before. I mean, I'm assuming there's a reason. It may be a reason that's not a great reason in your mind, that there's 20 other things to get done before the start of the term. No doubt it's busy, but it is what it is. We can shoot for it. But putting it in a contract, we're going to do it 3 months earlier, and then missing that deadline repeatedly doesn't help anybody either.
Well, the problem is, like you said, you don't work here.
Mhm.
We usually have our syllabuses together well before the first day of classes. There have been, I would say, at least several instances where within the week prior to classes, and sometimes even the day before classes, a change is made. And so it requires the faculty have to go back and do that. Reasonable time to me is a loophole. Who defines the reasonable time? Is that 6 months, 2 days? What's reasonable time? I think we need to have a little better time frame for reasonable time. I know that's a little lawyer ease here. And I'm not a lawyer, but I just see that as not a good thing.
It's just a recognition of the fact that every circumstance is different. So the alternative in putting a hard and fast date in there is that it can't be met depending on the circumstances. And we get the frustration that if you have syllabus changing a week before class, that's something that no one wants to see. But it's not something anybody's shooting for. And sometimes you may have everything you need done well in advance, but it goes up the chain or whatnot, supervisor, and there's a million things everybody's doing in administration too.
There are a million things that faculty do as well.
No
And
doubt
having
about
syllabus
that.
change the day before class is extremely difficult taxing on faculty, all right? I'm not understanding why it's difficult.
That's why we're not putting the day before.
Well, we can put at least a reasonable time frame to this instead of just saying,
That's what it
okay,
says.
whatever, because that whatever is very vague. You seem to be against vague things in some areas, but then you're pro in others, and I don't understand that, all right?
Well, I'll explain it.
Well, the reason that we put this in this contract is because it's important to faculty to have that heads up as to what we're gonna do. We have to put these things online because of administration requirements. We have to give these things to our students. We have to make sure that we understand what these things are and explain them. If we don't have time to do this, it's difficult. And all we're asking is for the administration to give us a reasonable time prior to the start of class and let us know. I don't understand why that's such a problem.
It's not a problem. That's exactly what I put in there.
No, I put a number on it, okay? Not just because of reasonable, well, there's an extenuating circumstance where you told you the day before. That changes nothing from what's happened previously. It changes nothing. And we're trying to get that to change. That's the whole point of our contract here, is to try and change things that are difficult for faculty. We're trying to make a change. That statement changes nothing. And that's not going to be acceptable to faculty. It's difficult.
I don't know what to tell you in that regard. I can address the when I like generic language versus when we like specific language?
When
It's easy. No, it's, we want a contract that matches reality. So sometimes circumstances differ depending on each case. In that case, you cannot have a bright line. Other times you want specificity. That's the point where we're coming from.
But
In
you
this
keep
particular
proposing
case,
status quo on everything you get back to us. You gave us back the evaluations, or you struck out everything, keep status quo. You're not negotiating this, sir. You're just suggesting that we have status quo the way it is now. That's not the reason why we have a union here. We have a union because we're not happy with the status quo. And that's, you're kind of giving that back to us.
you're gonna have to convince the negotiating team and maybe the board of trustees why the status quo isn't the best for the college and its mission. So having a union means we have to negotiate. It doesn't mean we have to agree to everything the union wants. And the status quo is a status quo in large part because over the history of this college, these are the policies that administration has determined work best. Now, can it be improved? Maybe. Can the faculty bring forward areas where we would agree this needs to be changed? Yeah, but not on everything. And part of these sessions, I'm not going to tell you how to run your strategy, but you want us to agree to some things, you have to persuade us that the status quo is worse than what you're proposing.
We just did.
And that should be a
We
two-way
just
street.
did. I
Persuades
don't know
me.
how hard that is to understand, that doing this way is difficult for the faculty.
It is, no doubt.
So why
It's
are you
difficult
not
for
willing to
administration.
negotiate on this part when you're clearly aware that it's difficult for the faculty? Are you not willing to bend to help us in any way? It's
We
just gonna be status quo because the administration wants it that way? Could it be you're wrong?
All I can tell you is just because you articulate it doesn't mean we agree with it.
And vice versa.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. If we're going to get an agreement, we have to meet somewhere in the middle.
So what we,
You're not doing that.
what we need to hear then, so there are some extenuating circumstances. So you're saying in this example, we can't have a hard and fast line because there will be things that might come up in the summer. I'm not in meetings with administration to know, but I know we've had changes and they realize whether it's ADA compliance or some things that we need to take care of. And we recognize that. We don't want to put the college in jeopardy of not meeting some of those things that help the students. So we're not saying that, but should we have the change the day before and syllabuses are already uploaded? Some people have 5, 6 different
It's a red
syllabi.
herring.
So then
Nobody's saying that.
it's not helping the student to then, this instructor has this syllabus. Now, we started classes, so to now go back and upload the corrected syllabus that was handed to us a week before is not gonna work. So that's what we're saying, there has to be a negotiation of, well then, is a month before reasonable? When are the meetings completed with administration that you would know by state guidelines, by things that were broken, we need to make these changes in the syllabus for the students' advantage. We want to implement them, but it has to be a time that works for everybody. It's not just, hey, this is inconvenient for faculty. Because, we're never going to win on that. We know that. Because we have to be inconvenient sometimes, just as management does. So at what point do we say, this is important enough, like we say to our students, I have to give you a deadline. I understand there are things that will happen, but at one point, I will not be able to assess this thing you've turned in. So there's a deadline. And therefore, we have to move ahead with that deadline. So why can't there be that so that we can get through this process better? So that we can get our syllabus done on time, so administration's happy with the changes?
Do you honestly think that putting something in contract says, last day of the fall, we're gonna have all the course syllabuses set for the spring, or maybe the spring, last day of the spring coming up here in a few weeks, right?
Well,
That
whatever.
we'll have everything we need to know for all courses in the fall. Do you really think that is a workable solution? You're not gonna have anything over summer change anything?
Well, maybe August 1st would work. We would have at least 3 weeks
Maybe.
there, end of July.
Right?
But that's what
Maybe it would work, maybe it
negotiation
wouldn't.
is.
Maybe June would work, maybe it wouldn't. So our proposals were, there seems to be an assumption that I'm hearing, or an implication that administration is doing this because we want to hurt the faculty.
They
Do you guys really
do
think
not
that's?
use those
No,
words.
no,
It's
no,
just that it happens.
no.
It happens, right? So
Yeah.
why does it happen? Let's start there. If there's a problem with it, why is administration not getting the course syllabus
You
in?
would have to ask them. I do not know.
Right? So what we're talking about on our side is now we know what the reasons are, and there are myriad of reasons. Administration positions may be unfilled. We're filling them in this summer. Things of that nature. Things change, registration changes things. We can't pinpoint, you're always gonna have 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 2 weeks, which is why we've said reasonable period of time. Now, if at some point you have a contract that says that and you think administration is just jerking us around, they could do it in a more reasonable period of time, but they're not, that's where you can file a grievance. If you could show that, that's never gonna happen because that's not what the administration does.
But with this.
But a
this
bright
economic
line-
statement, There's nothing you can do with that. I think.
Can
that you
propose something counter, but what we don't like is the principal having this bright line that you have a contract that is aspirational and cannot be met. We don't want that. And we're not going to agree to anything that in reality can't be met. So if you want something that is that standard, it has to be something that can be met. Now, maybe we put in a timeline with some flexibility. We'll agree to, I don't know, I'm just talking out loud here, thinking out loud. Agree to 30 days in advance unless there are exigent circumstances, something along those lines. Those are the lawyer terms. If you want to have something like that, that's something we'll talk about. This is our proposal, but having just the bright line that gets missed, it's not going to solve this problem by just putting it in the contract. It's not happening today. Just putting it in the contract doesn't make it happen.
So we've heard you talk specifically about spring to fall, finalizing fall by the end of the spring. Could be new administrators, so many things could change. What about some of the other sort of borders there? What are things that come up after the last day of the fall term, for instance, that require significant changes to the syllabi for the spring semester?
I have to discuss with the team. I don't know if you guys, anybody want to address.
Could be things coming out of legislation.
I assume there's not a whole lot in the fall to spring, but
There could be things that come from the state.
I'm sorry, we
changing
can't hear you.
curriculum, changing framework.
We can't hear you.
No, it was- Excuse me, may I speak?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, so by the end of if you're talking about the end of the fall semester, you're talking about sometime in December before we close for winter break. Legislation hasn't met, they don't meet until the spring. Sometimes, there's not a lot, but there may be something coming out of legislation that may affect curriculum or may affect something that has to go into a syllabus. Or, we found out that we had to put in an ADA clause, and I'm not sure where that came about, but when we found that, we had to make that change. There's sometimes things change with the state, curriculum will change, courses are reworded. Right now, there's some emphasis on redesigning math, especially where it pertains to developmental math. So there may be changes that come to us late, and certainly after the end of the fall semester, that may impact the next academic year, which would be the next fall. So nobody wants to give the faculty a change. Okay, now go change your syllabus right before classes start. Nobody wants to do that. I can assure you that is not administration's desire. So if that were to happen, it's because of something that we just found out about late, and now we need to try to comply with it. So I don't think you could put a hard date, certainly not that date, and then be assured that nothing's going to change before you come back, 8 months later. That is a long period of time that things may change beyond the college's control. But, a reasonable time, yeah, that can be vague, but then again, as Brian pointed out, if you just put a hard, fast date in there, well, what happens if something happens after that date but before classes start, that necessitates that you make an adjustment to the overall syllabus template. That's our position on it, is we can't predict what may happen that's beyond our control.
Well, one question we might have are what would be the repercussions of not putting X in the syllabus for that semester and having to wait until spring? So that's just your question. Would it depend on what the item is? And is there a creative solution to that instead of the syllabus document's been done, it's been handed out, it's been uploaded? Can we put on Canvas an addendum and say, as opposed to now everybody go back and change your document, redistribute, re-upload it. So I think there are ways to solve things and address them individually so that you have a way around it. So, this is a good change. If we don't do it, we're not doing anything illegal. We're not going to be in trouble for this, but we want to make sure it's in for the spring. So having that communication where we solve the problem together and nobody's frustrated and there's sometimes creative solutions to that. So that's just, a question that we raise about approaching it as a collaborative problem solving as opposed to no, we cannot, or us saying it has to be the state. There's got to be a way to get there.
But I think if I may, I think if you're using technology, then from your example, if you're going to update your Word document or your PDF, and you let students know via email, your syllabus has been updated to include, in this example, ADA language, I'm not sure then, that to me is the collaboration, but I'm not sure then what the problem would be, because you're letting students know and you're also updating your syllabus, and it's not too much strenuous activity on the faculty's behalf. So I'm not sure what the problem would be in doing something like that and having a creative solution, because you are meeting the requirements, you are notifying students, you are putting it in your syllabus, and so I'm not sure why there needs to be a hard, fast deadline it has to be done in a couple of, today, what has to be done tomorrow, because if you use technology, it can be done as soon as you make the change.
That's
In that
nice,
example
except
that
that's not the only thing we have to do when we get ready. There are a lot of things to do.
Understood, but I'm addressing her example of technology. So I agree with you that we can do that, and it's easy to do, so there shouldn't be any kind of extra burden on the faculty to do it.
I guess, I think maybe to communicate what it had to do with the syllabus document itself, as if we've got this checklist of things that we've got to do. Semester gets running and going back, we miss so many things, because we already have students who have special requests, we've got all this. And so to have done the syllabus, checked it off, we know the bulk of it is what we're, at least up to that point, is what was required. So if we came and I'm saying we would not go back and revise the syllabus that semester. If it was something that legally would get us into a funny position, we have to make sure this thing about sexual misconduct, whatever it is put in, then that's a quick technology. We get sent, here's what we need to have added, boom, put it on Canvas, as opposed to now re-upload each syllabus and then change the formatting, and there are two different places we have to drop it in. So that was what I was saying. We wouldn't go back and now redo the syllabus.
And I guess what I'm saying, and I'd have to see what you're referring to as all of the places you have to upload it. What I'm saying is utilizing the technology, it would not be difficult to do. So that's what I'm saying. So I thought that's the road you were on. So I was agreeing with you that it would not be difficult to do. That is something that we could talk about as a creative solution.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's along the lines of what you're suggesting might be fertile ground for looking at a compromise between your position, the union's position, and ours. 'Cause I think some of what you're saying makes sense to me, but we want to see what that looks like language-wise again, because on the legal side of it, I want to make sure whatever we end up with is something we can accomplish. Because otherwise, all we do is set up fights, and grievances, and hostility between administration and faculty. So course syllabus isn't going to be the biggest issue that we have to discuss throughout negotiations. We all know that. So, but by the same token, once we have an agreement, we want to make sure it's something we can live with productively. And disputes and grievances will arise, and you hope we can work them out informally, but we don't want to end up with an agreement that just has a whole bunch of problem areas waiting to erupt. So I don't think that's good for either side. I hope we can agree on that.
I think it'd be beneficial to us that we could establish a time frame. All right, what we're trying to get the administration to understand is that we have a lot of things to do. And if you you could make an effort to get things done, let's say 2 weeks before the semester starts, that would help the faculty a great deal. Now, if you could say 2 weeks before would be enough time for us to make changes and accommodate things, all right, number one. Two, I'm willing to, could we not put something in there that says if there's an extenuating circumstance, a legal matter or something that cannot be resolved until 2 weeks before the semester, that we agree that we can fix that, if that's okay. There's some common ground here, but we're trying to get the administration to understand that just giving us this at any old time right before the semester is stressful and it's difficult. We're trying to get you to appreciate that and at least help us out a little bit, all right? That's the whole point to this. Also, if that syllabus is not in its final form by the time classes start, students don't have the opportunity to look at the syllabus. They look at it and they use that as their Bible for every class, and they also have a right to that syllabus, all right? And if we're not giving them the correct information on time, that's a disservice to the student, all right? So all I'm asking is that maybe we can come to some common ground and say, maybe 2 weeks, this administration is gonna shoot for 2 weeks before the semester starts. That's our goal, to get that to you, so, because we understand you have other things to do. But if there's a situation where that can't be met, we understand that too, all right? But that's all we're asking, just common ground. Put the general term in there whenever, that's not good for anybody, all right? It really isn't.
I don't think we disagree with anything you just said.
Okay, well then let's talk about that. Let's get that part of it done. I'm good with it, all right?
That's maybe a good counter proposal. I mean, that's along the lines of what we're suggesting too. We recognize you have a lot of things to do and it's stressful.
More
And
every
you
semester.
recognize, because you just said it too, that administration also has a lot of things to do right before the
I
semester. So
understand that
that's,
if the state comes down with some kind of a statute that you can't avoid. I understand you have no choice if that comes late, and states do that, okay? And for those circumstances, we can make allowances. We have to do that. We all are working on the same team. But if we can get you to at least say, okay, we're gonna make every effort to get this done a couple of weeks before the semester, to give you some time to get everything in, I'm good with that, all right?
I don't think we oppose that thought. So now the challenge is to get language that matches that sort of thought.
Okay.
We can work on that.
Well, of course, syllabus was the easier one today. It's Friday anyway, at least. 9:10 is our proposal on substitute teaching. So we took the union's proposal and we've just tried to tweak the first 3 sections there a little bit. That I don't think is a real big substantive change. You had it drafted such that it required the approval, for example, the campus provost. We didn't think it was that formality was necessary, and changed that language where we saw it in here to kind of approval of the supervisor would just notify the provost. In other words, keep the provost in the loop. We don't need the approval of the provost. So we understand and appreciate your proposal in that regard, but it's just that's not necessary. We did add to subsection A, the last sentence, that we want to make sure that it's clear that the college still has a right, if there's some sort of substitute issue that is not workable, that we can say, no, that's not going to work here. However, it's not our intent really to just, as we read your proposal, is sort of to codify what you're already doing for the most part, is to do the same thing. So presumably we wouldn't have to use that authority, if you will, to block substitute, but it could come up. So the only other thing that we've suggested, which we disagreed with in your proposal, was subsection D, that where there wasn't this practical time, exchange of time to pay a substitute, we're not agreeable to do that. That's our proposal on substitute teaching.
Is the striking of section D, is that purely a cost consideration, or is there a sense of somehow double payment, or, I mean, is it a cost thing, or is it more of?
It's not so much a cost thing, it's each faculty member is paid to teach their contract. If you want to switch and substitute for one another, things of that nature, it's one thing, but then to bring in a third or another person and pay on top of that. I don't know what the cost would be. We didn't cost that out, but it's more of a philosophical The other thing that I think is a concern is that the informal way of handling it now will suddenly dry up, and now everybody's gonna wanna get paid, so it's a slippery slope to now we're gonna have to pay everybody for substitute opportunities. I don't know if that would happen, but that's probably some of the concern as well.
Okay, I understand. Any questions? All right.
Article 911 is business and professional expenses. So on this one, we essentially, and I apologize, the section numbers apparently got dropped, but we've essentially suggested the status quo. We will encourage you to attend not only external but internal professional development opportunities. You can get reimbursed pursuant to the current policy, which is codified as part of the Internal Management Memorandum 5-2 for any actual expenses incurred. We did not agree with the proposal to provide college paid cell phone or to provide for licensures that might be required by your area of expertise.
Hey, Brian, just one comment on that. On the first paragraph at the end, we say for actual expense incurred, that may not be true because we do per diems for food allowance, so there's a set amount within the IMM, not an actual reimbursement of a receipt amount.
So we might want to
Change
just
that
clarify
terminology.
that then
Just
either actual or per diem.
Yeah, per, just in sense, per the IMM, it states all that out.
So just reference to the IMM and then period. No
Yeah.
further.
Because instead of submitting a receipt, you just get a set per diem for, a breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
Yeah, so why don't we clarify it to just drop the period after IMM number 5-2 if that's already covered, rather than create an area of ambiguity.
So in the second paragraph, this is something that was brought to us primarily by nursing faculty, and I don't remember if we spoke to this issue in detail in the first session where it was presented, but we thought there may be some mutual interest here. Obviously we understand there would be a cost associated with that, but nursing faculty, when they're doing clinicals, students who are in their clinicals essentially have 24/7 access to their phones, and that doesn't stop at the end of the semester. And it is sometimes, a significant nuisance to these faculty to have their personal cell phones being accessible to students long after they're out of their class or even out of college altogether. I don't think I need to, give a big lecture on boundary issues between faculty and students, but that's kind of, that's a big piece of what motivated this proposal. So I'm not sure if the objection there was a cost consideration, or if it was something else, but if there's a way to meet that need with a lower cost, I think we'd be receptive to it, but that's the main concern that motivated that piece of the proposal.
Well, what I would recommend maybe, and I certainly read that more broad, if there are specific programs or faculty positions where a second phone serves that function. If you want to propose more narrow language, we look at it, again, I don't know if it's a cost. The way we read it is any faculty member who needs to be available by phone, we're going to provide you a phone. That would probably be a significant cost, but it's 2019. If it was 1999 and you wanted a phone, one thing, but everybody here's got a phone, right? I hope you have a cell phone. I'm envious if you don't, but so we don't we don't feel like we need to be in the business of providing a phone. Now, if the concern is more, we don't want students, because of the nature of our specific position, to have our personal number. So we want a second phone. Then I would say your language is too broad, and we've interpreted that differently. And if you want to propose something more narrow for this program or these things, then I haven't taken the temperature of our team whether that would be doable or not. But
Well, we eliminated administrative phones a few years back, so we eliminated employees' phones years back and absorbed it within the responsibility of the position for that employee to have the phone themselves.
This is a little more extensive, all right? This is a student contacting faculty, all right, for educational purposes, okay? So.
But then eventually not
It's a little bit
educational
different.
purposes is the concern. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a little bit different, right? This is nursing faculty that are relying on their cell phones to be in communication with their students. It's an essential part of their program. It's essential to what they do, and all they're simply asking is could they be provided with a second phone by the college that can be used for that purpose, so that when the semester is over, all right, that person doesn't have access to their personal information, their personal cell phone, and doesn't keep calling them at all times, all right? It's a little bit different. I understand administration would get rid of personal phones. I get that. Okay? But this is a little bit different. These people are put in a precarious position, and they're trying to do the best job they can, but they can't do it with a cell phone communication with their students. So they're asking for maybe a little consideration. Maybe there's some common ground we can find on this to help them out a little bit.
I think
What-
that's
what
Nice
is-
to have,
What's
you
the
know.
hesitation of them contacting them by
Well,
the regular
probably
phone?
not.
or leaving
You
a
can
message?
understand that if a student, the class is over, it's 10 o'clock at night, and, all of a sudden they're calling you on your personal cell phone, or maybe the semester's over, or maybe they've been graduated for 4 years, they still have access to all of this.
Why wouldn't they call their work number, leave a message on the work number?
When they're,
Well,
so
even if
when,
that's the student, that
Not
would-
I-
clinical, so you can't do
yeah, so I had lots of conversations with lots of nurses about this exact issue. When you're a nurse doing clinicals, there's a period, you're on call for periods. And that's like a 24-hour or longer period. And you can't just, and they need access to you immediately. If they're calling you overnight, it's not just to say, hey, right? If there's an immediate concern, immediate issue that they need to get in contact with the nursing faculty immediately to address. So I don't,
what I would suggest is, I think I hear what you're saying, and we probably need to have that conversation. If the way your proposal is worded now is it's more broad than just those positions as faculty members. So if there's unique positions that you think it makes sense to have that second phone, I would ask you to propose that language directed at that, and we could caucus, maybe not this meeting, but whenever, and see if there's an exception. I think what we're saying is, as a general principle, the administration and college get out of business of providing second phones to everybody, whether it's administration or faculty. But if there's a unique position or program that it makes sense to do that, then that's a conversation we can have. I don't know if we'll agree with it yet, but we'll have that conversation. We just
Yeah.
I read your language here as way broader than that.
yeah, we aren't trying to just get basically work cell phones for everyone. It's, there are certain situations where students must have 24-hour access to faculty and, for educational purposes. And we think that it's appropriate for the college to provide those facilities in those instances.
If you guys
But
can
we'll-
identify those that you think that are and put that language in there, then we can look at it and see if it makes sense and have that discussion.
We'll work on that.
That was 9/11, 9/10/11. The only other one we had today was discipline. I don't know if you want to go into that or if you want to talk about the one you had. That you copied, Article 3, what's your preference, Grant?
Yeah, well, can't cancel now. All right, so we've got a few different things. Maybe we'll start with the one that was a little more challenging last time and end on the easier note. So we, probably more than anything else that we've addressed at the table so far, the issue that's kind of generated the most interest and discussion is this issue with department chairs and program directors, and specifically, this sort of prospect, I guess, of department chairs being eliminated in arts and sciences. Well, we've got enough for both teams, and I just gave extras to the audience, so, yeah, but I think we're okay. So I'll explain what you're seeing here in our proposal, and then I'm gonna ask a few of the faculty to kind of speak to the concerns. We added a new section B in 10.4, which was essentially something that we really liked out of the administration proposal, which was just basically this idea that if you're getting paid to be a department chair or program coordinator, then you shouldn't also be teaching overload classes. You know, if you're giving yourself several overloads, then are you really going to be able to perform those duties effectively? That's a concern that that our faculty shared. And so we've incorporated that into our proposal. We're in full agreement with that section. The other thing that you see here is a modification, I guess, kind of along the lines of the concerns with the standard course syllabus, not related to department chairs, but I will come back to that. Just kind of wanted to explain what you're looking at in section D. So we had made a proposal regarding, you know, compensation for development of online courses, and kind of the same concern there as with course syllabi. When those courses come very late, it's can be an extraordinary inconvenience to faculty who need to teach them. So we've included a provision that makes that compensation contingent on delivering it within 2 weeks of the start of that term when it's being delivered. But at any rate, we have a few faculty who would like to speak to the value of department chairs, and, you know, just kind of give faculty perspective on why we think those should continue to exist in the Division of Arts and Sciences in particular. So I'm going to ask Stacy to.
Well, thank you for allowing me a few minutes to speak concerning this issue. Committee members on both sides of the table. And my name is Stacy Thompson, and I am a chemistry professor, but I have been the chair of all science. I was the chair for all science for 2008 through 2013. We split our sciences into biological and physical in 2013, and I'm still currently the chair of physical sciences. So a long time. Anyway, and I think if you looked at our job description for this, you would notice that we are a colleague to our faculty members. We are faculty representative. We have managerial duties, clerical, assistant duties. We are data collection and entry, some HR work. I mean, it falls over the entire gambit. And the big thing is the chair is the conduit between the faculty and the admin in their respective divisions that they represent. And the key word here is conduit. Okay? Each year at PHSC, the cohort that we see in our student body has varying different challenges. And as faculty, because the chair is a faculty member, we're seeing it in that classroom, we're living it. We can discuss it with our co-faculty members, and we can turn around and present that information to administration, which just this term I did with Dr. Bay, concerning looking at his RBI data and realizing that that RBI data there was a certain contingent within the sciences that was a real issue. I could discuss that with my other faculty members and then present at your admin training as to this issue that we were seeing in the data. We have a different view of the data because we're in the classroom all the time and we see it. As a chair, we attend the administrative meetings, RBI, we discuss with colleagues, and we notice these issues when they are happening, which sometimes the data has a little bit of a drag on it because it takes us a while to collect it and see it. We're seeing it, okay? The faculty is able to do that drill down, meaning the faculty chair is a faculty member. We can do that drill down not only with our faculty, but we can take this up the line and say, we're seeing this problem. What do we need to do better for our students? Okay? The student issues are our issues, and we're seeing it every day, all day with them, whether it's in our office, whether it's in our classrooms. Not that certain administrative functions aren't saying that. Advisors are seeing it in certain areas but we are that direct conduit. We are called during compliance audits. Why do they call a faculty member who serves as a chair for a compliance audit? Well, they want that key view into what's going on with our students. That's why we're called to those audits and routinely asked to speak. We represent the students. Isn't that why we're all here? We're all here for the students, but sometimes we lose focus of that. I want to just tie this up. It was supposed to be 2 minutes. I couldn't get it under 5. But Dr. Beard gave us 6 core values. And I think 3 of them describe not only what the chairs are, who we all are, but one is really directly related to chairs. So the first core value is community. We are a community, and in every community there are people doing different functions. And if we don't keep that conduit open, we're going to lose sight of what those students are. And the chair is your direct conduit to those cohorts of students coming through now. Okay? So to be a solid community, we all need to take ownership of this vision. The second one is excellence. Our faculty is continually concerned with us keeping that level of excellence that we have had. That status quo, the groups are different. We need to start doing certain things better. Status quo is not working in the current situation with our current set of challenges. We need to try something new. We might fail, but if we're a community, we will pick ourselves up and do better. Then the last one, which resonated the best with me, is Dr. Beard, his last core value is stewardship. And I'm a numbers person, I'm a chemist, I'm analytical, I'm not good with words. So I had to look up the true definition of this. And I'm gonna end with stewardship is the careful, responsible management of something to be considered worth caring for and preserving. That is our institution, our quality, our students, our unit. And chairs are the bridge between that classroom and that administration, which has lost maybe touch with that a little bit. So if you guys decide to try to realign, you are losing that connection. And that's what I had. So I'm going to say thank you for my probably 5 minutes.
We also had a, sorry?
Are we allowed to make any other testimonials?
Well, we had a couple who were written by faculty who couldn't make it, so we'll go through those, but we can talk.
Thank you, sir.
Are you gonna start with me?
Yeah,
All
sure.
right. I am reading this on behalf of Wojciech Hojna, and I hope I did not butcher her name. She's a philosophy professor at Spring Hill campus.
She's a him.
Oh, see, there you go. Boy, oh boy, I had to have it phonetically spelled for me, there's no way I was gonna say it. But in all seriousness, all right, he writes, I think we need department chairs to represent us before the dean, provost, and the administration, not the other way around. If the department chair is eliminated and replaced by the associate dean, then he or she will represent the administration and not the faculty faculty, so the information flow will be from the top down, and it should be from the faculty up to the administration. Secondly, the department chair is knowledgeable about the subject matter that we are teaching, and he himself is teaching. In our case, Larry teaches philosophy and is able to advise us on many issues regarding the courses we are offering. An associate dean, frequently not a teacher, would be just an administrator, able to do the schedule, but not much more. I cannot imagine how a professional career administrator would be able to facilitate SACS pilot programs, evaluation of outcome effectiveness, etc., if they are not familiar with the course content. And that is his opinion.
I'm reading this for Janine Ray, who's a psychology professor at Spring Hill. And she says, I went to the email archive and looked back to November 2018, to see the issues that I've discussed with my chair in the last 18 months. As an assistant dean who is not a psychologist nor a professor at PHSC, at the time, we would not be able to address these issues adequately. I would have had no help in these particular issues, and she's listed the issues. First, last time I contacted my chair this week, I discussed not being able to get into Rebel, our online assessment material for Intro to Psychology. And I asked if she was having I asked her if she was having students who were having problems. We discussed this and we were able to resolve the issue with the publisher. My chair is my conduit to the publisher for psychology-specific materials. I generally contact my chair first to see if her students are also having problems with online materials, and then she contacts the publisher for us. 2, my chair has organized publisher showcases every semester so we can assess and or select new text, editions, online materials for our psychology courses. Every semester and during the summer, all psychology professors work together to assess and select psychology-specific materials. 3, we have had many meetings about psychology student learning outcomes, which is something that only the psychologist can do. 4, our chair is also the conduit to administration as we choose our current our current course load and the fall schedule. Psychology professors, our chair included, know exactly which classes we need, which classes fill, and how fast they fill. We need to know which classes are not going to fill on our campuses so we can do the appropriate schedule. 5, in August, our chair contacted those of us able to fulfill another psychology professor's caseload since he was going through a family issue. Through her experience with our department, she knew exactly who would be able to take on the required courses. 6, another semester, there was a reoccurring problem with our test banks we were using for courses. During this time, my chair served as a conduit to the technology department. Rather than multiple professors contacting technology about our online material problems, we sent our issues through our chair, who is intimately involved with materials, and she worked with the tech department to have the issues fixed. 7, our chair was instrumental as we pursue new coursework in psychology. We've added service learning, forensic psychology to our classes since I've been here at PHSC. We have all worked as a group to design and approve those new courses, but it all comes from everyone involved being knowledgeable about psychology specifically. And finally, we held weekly online meetings one summer to design materials for a text-free course. Psychology expertise was paramount in these discussions, and so she is for keeping our chair.
Any others? Or?
There's a third one. Somebody else want to read this?
Do you want to read it?
Sure.
Yeah, I can't read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this person didn't feel comfortable identifying themselves for whatever reason.
All right, so anonymous testimonial. I did not want to join a union. However, here I am, a union member. There are many reasons why I became a member of the union. I will explain 2 of the most important reasons. Communication or lack thereof has become an issue within departments and across departments. Changes one department implements may affect others, but there is no communication until it becomes a problem, thus impacting students and their learning environment. Consistency across the college. Departments, chairs, and directors are not all treated the same. One chair may only have to teach 3 courses, while the others must teach 5 or more courses. Directors are not given the same stipend as chairs, although they are asked to do the same or more tasks. To do away with the chair or director positions in one department, but allow others to have those positions shows lack of consistency and causes disparage among the departments. These positions require an immense amount of investment in faculty and are the only line of communication between faculty and administration. On an average day, in the life of a chair or director, they get up early, check email from students on My PHSC. When the students email a faculty member, the faculty address the concerns or troubleshoot issues, which can be time-consuming depending on the student's issue. Correspondence with students is paramount to their success, and timely replies are necessary to that success. Next, they check their work emails. This can take an hour to address and respond to as appropriate. Then prep for courses being taught that day. Yes, faculty must prep for the courses to refresh materials and objectives, especially for new courses or those courses not offered every semester. Depending on the number of courses, this can take some time. Then off to the classroom to teach, to committee meetings or office hours. When one is lucky, they would use the office hours for a time to grade unless a student needed time to meet. However, most office hours are used to research tasks and projects. Grading, depending on the course, can be very time-consuming, especially for courses that have multiple assignments that are not self-graded assignments. With the increase in students within the courses themselves, one assignment can take half a day to review to ensure each and every student understands the concepts being taught. When you're teaching 6 or 8 courses, and they're all different course preps, grading could require 16 hours of your work week. The chair or director is then tasked with staying informed about the field of study to ensure our students are taught current information and can meet requirements for their field. How could this be a requirement for the associate dean? One person cannot address all the implications of all the courses within one department, nor be able to offer or address what curriculum should be taught, updated, in all the fields under their purview. We all want the students to succeed and to be the best we can be to provide the necessary materials and curriculum to our students. Lack of communication and consistency decreases the chance of our students are provided with the best outcomes. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so I heard all of these for the first time as well. I think the 2 threads I heard most frequently were that I guess skepticism that the work that is performed by department chairs could be adequately performed by associate deans who sort of inherently aren't going to be familiar with all the course content and everything else that goes on in each department, as well as concern that a line of communication between faculty and administration might be lost, and that could have, any number of other negative ramifications. So I think at this time, our position is that we do need to keep department chairs in, where they are. But as I said earlier, we have taken a piece of your proposal that we thought was good and have incorporated it into ours. Sort of.
Can I speak? Is that a testimonial?
Yeah.
Okay. I've been at this college for 30 years, all right? I have seen it grow from 3 campuses to 5 campuses. And to remove the chairs and replace them by 2 people, particularly in arts and science, represents a huge, huge step backwards in the quality of the education of the students we are here to serve. Huge. I also want to say that Stacy's absolutely right. We're in the trenches. We're with the students. We feel the pulse of the students and we know what the issues are and they change year to year. The campuses, all 5 of them have different personalities, different problems, different concerns, right? And it's the faculty that communicates these concerns and needs to their chairs. No administrator on one campus can have that experience in the same way a faculty member has. Also, I fully acknowledge that associate deans on each of the campuses do an excellent job scheduling because they know their campuses, all right? And the collaboration between the chairs and the deans has been very, very good and profitable. But the associate deans aren't curriculum-specific experts, and that's where the chairs come in. I was a humanities chair for 8 years. 8 years. I had the joy of developing curriculum. I had the pain of trying to deal with assessment. All right. When chairs were first created, I believe it was 2005. We've had chairs for 15 years. You guys do the math. I don't do math on humanities. It started out at a particular, it remained $5,000 stipend. I was totally unaware that coordinators in other areas were not getting the same compensation. All right, this was a shocking and appalling thing came to the faculty senate. We spent a year, coordinators, chairs, and Dr. Richardson, you can speak to this, putting together a proposal for administration to bring more equity to the reimbursements, the stipends. I'm not even gonna go into the business about extra pay and time. That's a whole other area. But we spent a lot of time and we were told, no, we can't act on this because there isn't money this year, but we will revisit it. And instead of revisiting it, we have been given this, oh, we want to get rid of chairs and create 2 more administrative positions. I'm sure there's a rationale. I haven't heard it. But to do this is a disservice to the students. Our college has grown, all right? You need the feedback of the entrenched, the people in the trenches, the faculty who talk to their chair. All right, so I just have to say, I am just aghast at the idea of taking this step backwards. And if you look at some of the other community colleges around the state that have chairs and how effectively they are used, this proposal is unthinkable, absolutely unthinkable. And those are my feelings on it.
Okay, so, well, I think as you've heard and seen, this is an issue that people feel strongly about. So again, at this time, we're not willing to agree to proposals that would permit the elimination of department chairs. I think we understand that, if the college wants to hire administrators, that's, it's business. It's perfectly free to do that. We couldn't, stop it even if we necessarily wanted to, but we do think that whatever happens on the administrative side, there's a lot of value in maintaining department chairs throughout the college.
I'm not going to try and address all those points, but I would add a couple of comments. Again, Dr. Giannett is probably the expert on our side here, and he regrets he's not able to be here, but I did ask him about some of his issue, obviously knowing that the department chairs were going to be discussed this morning. And so I'm going to read a couple of things that he's indicated to me, because I want to make sure it's clear what our proposal is. Some of the concerns that were raised by the statements, I think, I know he would take some issue with it. It's not really what we're trying to do. So I'm going to read this from the expertise, the department-specific expertise and losing control of the curriculum. Our proposal, again, I'm just going to read from what he says here, Removal of the department chair structure in the Arts and Science Division will not change primary ownership of faculty over curriculum matters, course development, modification, student learning outcomes assessment, textbook and instructional material selection. Our view is that's going to stay with the faculty. We will continue to have the curriculum through faculty committees, cluster committees will have shepherd curriculum matters upwards through the associate dean. So what we're looking at is taking the other types of responsibilities, like supervision of the adjuncts, selection of the adjuncts, evaluation of the adjuncts that department chairs are tasked with, that aren't getting done on a consistent basis, moving that kind of thing to an administrative position. We're keeping the curriculum-driven matters with the faculty. And I think I heard Dr. Thompson, I think, mention that what we currently have hasn't been working as best as we want to do. So status quo isn't working. We need to change it. We don't have the consistency in results we're looking at. That's what we're trying to address, how we go about doing it.
Can I address that?
Sure.
What I'm not hearing, and all due respect to Dr. Giannett, is the primary purpose for why the chairman's job is established in the first place. All right? This was based on a SACS evaluation 2 evaluations ago, in which it was determined that there was a lack of communication between the faculty and administration, and establishing the chair position would communicate and establish that bridge between the two. That is the most essential aspect of this. All right? I have no doubt that all the duties that the chairman has to do are going to remain the same with an associate dean, but you're missing the point. The point is it's communication. That dialogue between faculty and administration is going to be missing. That is an essential part. It was established for the faculty. It wasn't established as an administration position. It was established as a faculty position to be a liaison to the administration to help the faculty. And in the beginning, their duties were doable. I was one of the first science chairs. I was there when the position was established. I was also the first biological science chair. And in the beginning, those duties were very doable and there wasn't an issue. But over time, the administration kept giving the chair jobs more and more responsibilities. And now it has got to the point where a chair cannot do both teach and administrative building duties that have been given to him at the same time. That's where the issue really is. The importance of that job is essential, all right?
How do we address that?
It's a communication. Well, I think there needs to be some type of give and take here where, okay, we're going to maybe give the chairman a little bit of release time in terms of what they want, maybe cut back on a little bit of what you want. There's a lot of leeway there, but to dissolve the chairman's job altogether and give it to an administrator, that solves one problem, but the essential reason for why it was established has been disintegrated, and that's just gonna, and I agree with Connie, we will take a step 15 years back, and we need to go forward, all right? The communication is that word. If no one else remembers anything else, it's communication between faculty and administration. Guys, it's essential. The more we talk, we're here talking, but if we cut that communication between faculty and administration, things are not gonna get better, they're gonna get worse, all right?
Doesn't the nursing department already have this same configuration that we're proposing?
What might work for some might not work for others, all right? In the arts and
Understand
sciences, this would be a disaster. In other areas, I can't really speak for whether it would be good or bad, but we're proposing to get rid of the chairmans in arts and sciences, and I can speak as a former chairman, this would be a disaster to do this, all right? So there is leeway. Let's talk about how we can fix this, all right?
So I'm Caitlin Guiley. I'm teach biology on Spring Hill campus, and I am a numbers person. So I did the math. I don't have the numbers with me, but I looked up the associate dean salary for nursing, and it was $83,000, I think, and I think our benefits are probably $10,000 to $15,000. So if we were to hire 1 or 2 deans, that's $100,000 to $200,000. That's a lot of money. Okay. In contrast, if we were to give all of the department chairs in workforce development and arts and sciences and all the program directors in health occupations 3 credits of release time in spring and fall, and an $8,000 stipend, so some would be up from 3 to 5, some would be up to 5 to 8, or 3 to 8 and 5 to 8. If we increased their stipend and gave them release time, it would still be much less than $200,000. And this would be a solution, because there are issues with the department chairs. They're trying to juggle a full-time or more than full-time job, plus administrative duties. There are issues with it, and I agree with that, but getting rid of the chairs and hiring 2 administrators is not gonna solve the problem, it's gonna make it worse. Supervising adjuncts should be a department chair responsibility, because they're the subject matter. How am I supposed to evaluate, so how would an administrator evaluate a math teacher? And so I agree that there are problems, but hiring more administrators is not gonna be the solution. Giving the chairs release time so that they have time to do their job and proper compensation to incentivize people that are motivated to do it is a better solution to the problem.
I also think you should point out that only the West Campus chairs evaluate and observe adjuncts, all right, on West and in their area in dual enrollment. On the other campuses, that work is being done by the associate dean. And unless you have a particularly wonderful associate dean who is an enlightened person and brings to the subject area expert on their campus the vita of a potential adjunct, you don't know what you're gonna get. They may be SAC certified, but they get in the classroom and they can't teach. We've already had examples, people being put in the classroom, unable to fulfill it and have left. So I just want you to understand that. And the idea of release time, if you have to go observe somebody at a high school, you need time between 7 and 2, all right, to go observe them. And that's not always easy when you're teaching face to face. Just tell you as personal experience. It's a very complicated thing.
I was gonna just mention, you were gonna bring up the nursing department. That's apples and oranges with arts and science. Our dean oversees a number of departments. She's overwhelmed. So I can see you maybe want to give her help with hiring an associate or assistant dean, whatever you're calling it. But those chairs are instrumental in our department. And my chair can talk to her. And she can talk about the whole department's issues because she is a social and behavioral scientist. We can't expect to hire someone who's gonna know something about math, who's gonna know something about language or English, who's gonna know about something about psychology. It's better to have a content expert having that liaison between administration and faculty. That's the problem, and I agree with Eric, is we're gonna lose that ability to create, communicate between the two.
So,
There's a compromise here.
You gotta,
yeah, sorry, it's time to move on. So again, as I think you've heard, this is a real hot button issue for the faculty. So I hope that the team will kind of take what you've heard under advisement and consider it carefully on this issue.
With that, you can rest assured we will do.
Thank you. I have a proposal on Article 8. So the changes that you see on the second page, I think will hopefully kind of clarify our intent with those different sections and maybe be a little more amenable. As you said last time, we're not trying to propose any sort of structure or system where determination on the success or failure of any administrator to perform their job, be within power of the faculty. Rather, we think that there's value to the college in having a more systematic process for receiving feedback on these different individuals. You know, despite how open door the policy may be, as we talked about last time, you know, you're going to kind of get a biased sample, and we don't think that's necessarily going to be the most helpful for the college. I think that the college's understanding of the performance of these individuals would be more improved by a sort of uniformly applied system that's accessible to all, and more likely to be taken advantage of by a greater portion of the faculty. So it's not a huge substantive change necessarily, but I think a clarification on what our intent was, and you know, the reasons for that are, you know, as we described in our last session.
I think we understand that.
I think this kind of thing is not terribly uncommon either. Going to some of the articles that we've been passing back and forth, we've got some proposals on Articles 3 and 4. I think we're optimistic that we hopefully arrived at something that will be workable for both sides on some of these things. So there are a couple of changes here on 3.5. I think 3.7 is kind of as was proposed last time. In 3.5, there was some concern in paragraph B that the term economic status was vague and broad and may invite frivolous complaints or grievances. As I kind of said before, the specific concern where I've seen this type of language come from is where sort of without any real justifiable reason, an employee's credit history is used against them somehow. So we have narrowed that term down to that specifically, credit history. We've had conversation about the whole political statements, activities, affiliation thing. We're sticking with our last proposal now. I don't know if I don't honestly recall if we had discussion about that piece of it to any great extent. But I will say, I think that depending on where we get on a couple of other sections, and I'm thinking specifically of discipline and possibly as well academic freedom, may influence our ability to be more flexible on that section. There are just some general concerns that may be better taken up in those other sections and not needed here eventually, but we'll just need to see where we get in those sections. In section C, we thought about, I think our discussion last time was that, even if we tried to waive the right to do something like file an EEOC complaint in the contract, they wouldn't necessarily give that any credence anyway. We thought about whether or not to try and waive an employee's right to pursue judicial action if they elect to file a grievance. I think we're sensitive to the college's interest in not having to fight the same battle twice in two different fora. But we haven't incorporated that into this proposal at this time. Again, not because we're necessarily opposed to it. We're just really trying to think through all the circumstances where that might restrict a faculty member's rights, and weren't able to get ourselves comfortable with that. But we're not closing the door on it necessarily. We're just not there right now. I think everything else is as previously proposed.
One second.
Sure.
Article 3.5 subsection C. That last point. The language you have here, a member of the bargaining unit who elects to pursue a discrimination claim by filing applicable administrative charges or judicial action shall be deemed to have waived his or her right to file a grievance alleging a violation of this article, and any such pending grievance shall be deemed withdrawn. However, such filing shall not be deemed a waiver of the right of other members of the bargaining unit or of the union on their behalf to file such a grievance. I think that's close to where both sides were trying to get to. Setting aside the class issue for the moment. The last sentence, I would propose a slight modification, or at least propose this idea and see if you guys are on the same page as we are here. But if there's a grievance pending, they file an EEOC charge, let's say as an example, then the grievance is deemed withdrawn, but other faculty members can still grieve it, or the union can grieve it. I don't think we have any issue with that. What I would want to add to the language is that the member who filed the EEOC charge or judicial action can't recover as part of that grievance. If that makes sense. So the union can file a grievance on behalf of multiple people, faculty at large. Individual wants to pursue their own claim in court, what have you, they can. Union or other faculty can still pursue a grievance, they can. But the person who pursued their judicial action can't partake in the relief through the grievance. Or does that make sense?
I think I understand. Yeah, basically, if you're not part of the grievance, you can't be part of a remedy of any other.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to court, you live with the result of the court. You go to grievance, you live with that. And it could happen that the union obtains relief for everybody else, all other faculty members, and you lose out in court, or vice versa. But you don't get double, or you don't get two bites of the apples. Still has the same idea. I don't think that puts anybody in a bad spot, but it comes up in the class action context too, where if you, in a class action, you can choose to exclude yourself from the class and sue on your own behalf, but then you're stuck with that. You're no longer entitled to any relief that the class might get. Same
Right.
basic concept. So if we could add something along the lines at the end there, that last sentence to that, I think we would be pretty close to something that, on subsection C anyway, I think we still need to have some discussion amongst ourselves on the differences in subsection B there. But we can propose some language along those lines, but it seems to me that one we're pretty close.
Okay, I'm just making a note. We'll talk about it. I'm gonna take the full note here. Okay. I guess I will say on 3.7, we had some discussion about this. I think everyone acknowledges strike is extraordinary, unlikely, and heavily punished under statute anyway. I think your concern was whether we'd be willing, I may be misremembering it, but to sort of grant the college the ability to get some sort of immediate injunction to stop it rather than having to wait for the court to do it on its own time. I think we understand the interest and aren't necessarily balking at the concept. If you want to make a counter proposal that has language along those lines, I think we'd be willing to entertain it. But not being confident that I knew how to write that language myself, I just thought I wouldn't invest the time in it. But if you have something you want to propose to that effect, I think that would be something we can talk about.
I'll make a note, talk about that.
And finally, a couple of things in Article 4. So the only two sections here to talk about at the moment, I think, are 4.1 and 4.5. We got counters on 4.2 and 4.4 today. We have a TA on 4.6, and I think, hang on a second. Okay, so the 4.2 that you gave us, I think, should actually be 4.3, the union office. 4.2 was the use of facilities, and I think our issues there where we had proposed some language on use of the email system or something. And if you don't have that today, that's fine. Just wanted to clarify that what you passed out as 4.2 corresponds to our 4.3.
Wrong number, okay, our union office proposal says Article 4.2, that should be 4.3.
Yeah, so we received 4.3, 4.4. I think we're waiting on 4.2, TA 4.6, and we're gonna kind of wait and see where we get on everything else, talk about 4.7. So the only pieces kind of here for the moment are 4.1 and 4.5. From our discussion last time on 4.1, the sort of outstanding issue was, what do we do if dues collection gets messed up? And I don't think either of us necessarily objected to the approach the other wanted to take in resolving that. I think your concern with our proposal was we had said that, whenever there's a change in the salary, you'll give us stuff immediately. I think you were concerned about the timeline there. Our concern with your proposal was we thought that only having the ability to do that once every 2 years was a little too infrequent. So to kind of try and strike a balance there, we've changed our first sentence in the section C to say, upon request, no more frequently than once a year, employer will furnish records sufficient for us to verify accurate deduction of dues.
I think the challenge in the last sentence, I would say, in the following paycheck run, depending on the timing when you get it to us and then what we have to do to correct it, you might want to leave a longer time frame, maybe like within the next month. Because if you give it to us, we're going to run a payroll and it's like 1 day away, we don't have time to do it. As long as we make it happen like within the next month.
Yeah, if you want to, you can think about whatever timeline works for you. I don't think that's going to be a huge hang up. If you want it to be like, the next paycheck run that's at least 10 days in the first or whatever. I think that's I don't think it's going to be a huge concern for us. So if you want to figure out what works for you, we'll receive that. I think everything else there is as it was in the previous proposal.
Makes sense. We'll talk about that.
In 4.5, we've just done a couple of little things here. So your counter proposal to our sort of laundry list of things in section B included basically that this is furnished upon request, not kind of, I guess, automatically, which we don't necessarily have a problem with, but we've made a change in our number 6 there. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense for us to make this all upon request anyway, but then also have a specific timeline for one of them. So we struck the timeline and just put a document containing, I mean, we'll probably only ask for it at the beginning of semesters, so, but that just kind of a logic thing, I guess. It just didn't make sense to put a time frame, but then also have it be on request. Then in the last section, subsection E, your proposal to exclude this section from the grievance procedure. As I said, most such proposals will be, we aren't necessarily going to be interested in entertaining them very often. However, knowing how public record law is in Florida and that the courts are swift and aggressive in enforcing it, we're not opposed to excluding from the arbitration process a determination as to whether something is public record in the first place. But, you know, we do want to be able to have the ability to enforce, you know, other aspects of this article, such as, you know, content and timelines of what's being given. But I would much rather a judge familiar with public records law be making that determination than an arbitrator who may not necessarily be familiar with it anyway. So that was not that did not cause us a whole lot of heartburn.
I understand that. We'll talk about that.
And that is what we have today.
Well, let me, and I apologize, I think I might still be able to get it after we do a caucus. The access to facilities, whichever number that was. I thought I had that
4.2.
with me. I think we have a proposal on that, but I don't see it, so I may have left that one at the office. But maybe we can print that out during the caucus. But we have Article 6, the discipline discharge proposal. So, you see it's a 3-pager, but I will cut to the chase and tell you our proposal is, well, we reject the union's proposal. Ours is an attempt to essentially codify the existing status quo. Which again, under the idea that we don't necessarily see that there is an issue with the way it's been working in the past. And as you can see, it's broken up in sections 1 and 2, differences for annual contract versus continuing contract personnel. Largely tracks existing state statutes, board rules, and internal management memorandum that we have, some of which are referenced where they are, where they're relevant. Having said that, knowing that the union probably would not like that, my initial thought was just to suggest we'll keep it simple and say we'll follow IMM number or whatever board rule that you want to spell it out. That's essentially the 3 pages endeavor to spell out the current statute, regulations, board rule, and IMM as to when continuing contract personnel can be terminated, discharged. Same thing, section 2 for annual contract. Happy to answer any questions if I can.
Well, why don't we take a caucus and we'll read, and when we come back, we'll let you know if you have any questions or if there's anything that we can sign off on or anything like that. I will just say, obviously a lot of your proposals are attempting to track the status quo. As we've discussed, a number of our proposals attempt to do the same. There's some things that we're fine with the status quo. There's some things that we're not. Thinking about this, haven't actually discussed it with the team, but I just want to just put it out there so that it can be done. I don't want to, be accused of progressive bargaining for making new proposals or anything, but may put a section in general provisions that says something like, with all these references to board rules and IMMs, we had this discussion. Does this mean incorporated by reference? Does it mean college has unilateral ability to change them? Blah, blah, blah. So I may propose something that tries to address that sort of generically so that, like by default, it's incorporated by reference unless it specifically says otherwise, or the other way around or something, just so that that's clear as we go forward, what can't be changed and what can.
Yeah, so let me make sure I understand what you're saying. The concern is if it's referenced, rule, IMM, whatever, making sure we're on the same page, that can be interpreted a couple different ways. One is you're incorporating the IMM as it exists when we sign the contract, it's ratified, but allows the college to change the contract by changing the IMM. Or alternatively, we incorporate it as it exists, and you can't change it until you come back and negotiate the change. Yeah, I get what you're saying there. It's one of those things I'll say earlier. I don't want to have a contract that sets up future disputes, so we can have a meeting of minds as what we mean when we're incorporating by reference. So that's the way I'd rather.
Right. Yeah.
Whichever way we end up there is, as long as we're all on the same page, it's better.
Yeah, it's the most frustrating type of grievance to deal with, at least on the union side, maybe on the management side, is where one side thinks that they've been given free rein to do something and the other has a different opinion on it. So if we can be clear on all that, I think it will be to the benefit of smooth labor relations in the future.
I agree. I mean, with a contract, we're hoping that it sets out the ground rules so everybody knows what to live by. And the last thing we want is a contract that creates more disputes. It's the opposite of what we're looking for. So that makes sense to me, Grant.
Okay.
If you want to propose that language, we'll happy to look at it.
All right. So we're gonna take maybe a half hour.
Yeah, I think that, and I'll see if we can get, I think I have that other proposal. We have, other rooms.
I don't remember what the other rooms were, set right across the hall.
Do we both have rooms or? is one
Yeah,
of
there's
us
two,
keeping
there
this
should be
room?
2 rooms,
Let me double
yes.
check to make sure they're open. I believe they are.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
so come back about 5 minutes to noon.
Are we gonna need the overhead?
I don't, Grant?